Okay, so 107, chapter 11, biosocial development, and specifically talking about special brains and special bodies. Part 2 has to do with learning disabilities, but I'm going to pause it right now so I can do kind of a quick catch up, and then I'll unpause it when it comes to learning disabilities. Yeah, so now we're going to talk about dyslexia, learning disabilities. This is a big deal here, especially for middle childhood. And even though you might think it might connect to the cognitive chapter, it really does live here in this biological piece. Next chapter we'll be talking about more of cognition, and learning disabilities obviously is a cognition, but they're finding that it's more of a structural issue. So that's why we put it in the biosocial chapter. So again, dyslexia, they're also finding out that there's different variations of dyslexia. Sometimes kids can read well, but they can't write it well, which is dysgraphia. But sometimes, the reading is different. The letters either disappear, flip orders, flip locations, flip sides. So it's a little bit different, and it's really hard to describe when you have it. And then it's really a really interesting thing to try to manage that. Sadly, dyslexia is not considered disabled enough for a lot of support services. And so as a teacher and a parent, you just have to find ways to help them with it. There are coaching techniques. There's all kinds of things that can help kids, but it's just a constant struggle. It's like trying to do a 3-legged race with 5 feet, kind of something like that. It's interesting. Now, dyscalculia, a lot of people have never even heard of this term. It really is like dyslexia, but just math. Now, I had an issue with perhaps having dyscalculia. Now, I'm decent at math, but I'm the person who, when I go to write a 4, a 6 comes out. Now, finally got that diagnosed as dysgraphia in college. So I have a learning disability. And it has to do with, I had a head injury when I was little. So it's not that my brain doesn't work. It's just like, I'll be going to write my name and I forget the M. So there's a translation error between what I understand and what I'm trying to do. Yeah. And there's another thing in there with a true head injury is usually called apraxia. And so I have something in there, which I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to double, triple, quadruple check my work. Because I understand when a kid with dyslexia is going to write a 6 and a 9 and they get that messed up. No, I get like a 2. Sometimes I'll go to write a 2 and a 3 comes out. Or a couple weeks ago, I couldn't write the letter E all day long. Every time I wrote the letter E, I kept writing the letter 3, like all day long. It was hilarious because my husband's like, he's like, I just do not believe that you have dyslexia. And I was like, well, I don't. I have dysgraphia. And ironically, my child has dysgraphia now. Now, dysgraphia is typically, again, mine is a little bit more like brain injury, but this is what dysgraphia looks like. You can see it. I'll read it to you. This came last year. He was 12, maybe 11, maybe the year before. Is that what an 11-year-old writing should look like? Now, just to be honest, mine's not much better. Oh, seriously, I don't even know where I have something. That's why you don't see me. Here's my writing. That's upside down, sorry. Oh, no, that is upside down. No, that is upside down, sorry. No, that is right side. I don't know. Jeez, I don't know. Oh, so yeah, I did put it upside down. Let me do it this way. So my writing is not super, it's not that bad, but it's not super great either. And I understand all the rules. I can do it, and I can actually, if I cursive write, primo, beautiful. Still forget letters too. But anyways, this from my 11-year-old, he folded it like this and said, I made this card like a diamond because you shine bright like one. Now, again, spacing's off, capitals are off, there's no space between the words, the letters are formed really poorly, and trust me, we've been working with the school on this, and up to now in the public school, they said, well, he just learned how to type. Well, yes, but you still have to handwrite stuff. And then it said, Happy Mother's Day, Mom, this is hilarious, just be warned. Mom, what would I be without you? Answer, hashtag, I would have the virus and live on the streets. So when your child has dysgraphia, this is what your cards look like, right? And this was, yeah, when he was 11 years old, 11. This is, so they don't even color well, right? And I mean, the guy's smart. It just, there's an error in the brain to write it all down. And so it's kind of ironic that, you know, you adopt and you have no genetic connection and this kid still has it. He also puts like a circle over the eye, which I think that might be a family pattern. I'm really curious that once we meet his family, if who does that, like puts a circle over an eye instead of dotting it, you know, so I'm curious about that. So dyscalculia, here's the deal on this one. Every time I teach this portion, one of you goes, oh, yeah, because it's actually pretty common. Listen, if you've taken a college math class twice, on the second time around, you're still failing, and then you take it a third time, still failed, and then you had to switch colleges or go outside the district because now you've taken it 3 times and you failed, you most likely have dyscalculia. I can't diagnose you. I'm not here to do that. But please talk to DSPS, please. I'm saying, let somebody help you. Listen, it is very common. It's very common, especially we all have math trauma too, by the way. We all had a teacher when we were little, like told us how stupid we were or how easy this was and you couldn't get it and there's something wrong with you. We all have this thing, you know? Yeah, I failed statistics the first time. Actually, no, I take it back. I got a D and then I asked the teacher to change my grade. He changed it to a D+. So please talk to DSPS, please, please, please let them help you. I did it in college, after a teacher said, I see that you, so for me, I have little cheats. I have little symbols that I do to go back and then check and erase and put the right symbol in, right, the right letter. And so one teacher's like, well, are you a native English speaker? I was like, yes. Well, I see these symbols that you have in there because I was writing an essay in English class and it was under time stress and I didn't have time to go back and do my symbols or whatever. And she's like, they look like Greek or Latin symbols. And I was like, oh no, those are just like cheats for my brain. Cause sometimes when I'm stressed, I forget what I'm writing. So I just put that symbol in and keep going. And then I go, when I was just like, oh honey, you have a learning disability. I was like, no, I'm 20. I got this. I'm a good student. I get straight A's, blah, blah. She's like, no, go check it out. And sure enough, yeah. So we'll finish up the last few minutes with autism, which is super fun. We're talking about this week in 205. Autism is just a different way. It's technically a social disorder, right? The kid is totally fine, but they don't understand social rules or social, what we call pragmatics, the unwritten rules of language. Meaning like you wouldn't walk up to your grandma and be like, hey, what's up? Right? You might do that to your friend, right? If that's like your gig, that's cool. But you also wouldn't talk to your professor in like hashtags and LOLs and stuff like that. The fact that you can change your language based on who you're talking to is a pragmatic strength, right? Kids who can't do that like forever, that's only one marker of autism. Sometimes you'll see it in younger kids. Some of the red flags are more appreciation of things than people. There's a lot of lining up stuff. There's a lot of rigidity in behavior. There's a lot of hand flapping. Another person's point of view. That's what Peyton's learning in his school. They call it perspective taking. And I even said to him, take my perspective right now. I have a migraine. I can't have you whistling in the house. And he goes, well, we're not covering that in my class anymore. So I don't have to do it. I was like, that's exactly what a child with autism would say. I learned it. I got the grade. I'm done learning it. It's like, no, it's a life skill. Or just being interested in somebody else. If you can, on Netflix, there's a thing called Love on the Spectrum. It's a little series about people in Australia grown-ups with autism trying to date. So cute. This will explain a lot. Very, very sweet. And there's a coach in there that says like, you need to like ask her or him his interests. What is interesting to you? You know, and it's really kind of fun. And all those people are very, very different, very, very sweet. You're going to fall in love with a couple of them. So cute. A couple of tears too. Let's see. Again, the DSM-5, it used to be called undifferentiated childhood schizophrenia. Watch, if you can, Temple Grandin movie. It was an HBO biopic, but I think you can get it anywhere now. Temple Grandin is a person, a real person, and she has TED Talks, and she is quirky and funky and super funny. But yeah, she's the first person who was able to articulate what autism is and what it does to the brain and how it feels, and very, very cool. So signs are, of course, this, you can't say that all kids with autism are the same, because you can't. In the autism community, say if you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism. They're all different. They can be hyperverbal, nonverbal, they can be super smart, they can have lower IQ, they can be very low functioning, they can be very high functioning. Some of them are like super, like even if you watch on Netflix the thing called Atypical, another cute little drama series, the kid was like hyper focused on penguins, and it was hilarious. But it's true, everything, like I said earlier, Peyton picked his thing on volcanoes. They don't see the big picture, they just see the one piece of it, and that's their thing, and then they max it out. They do a good job. Special education has a lot of laws that are put in by the federal government over the course of the years that protect kids, and special education is free. It can cost 3 times as much to educate a child with special needs, but it is free to parents. And there's a lot. The IEPs, and I told you this one, are response to intervention. If they're not responding to the interventions, that gives us a clue there. Least restrictive environment suggests that we should have kids closest to their typical peers, and not with a bunch of kids who are lower functioning. Now I see that we are a little bit past time, but I only have 4 more slides. So you're welcome to stay or go. I'm going to keep going because I'm recording it, and then I'll post it. But again, IEPs are a huge process. If you are curious about it, come take 205 with me. Nature or nurture, this is really kind of an interesting thing here. Percent of 3 to 21-year-old children, because special needs goes up to 21. So I do have people on an IEP in my classes. Yep. With special educational needs. Now, special ed is just a program. It's not a person. And we say person first language. We don't say the special ed kid. We say the child in special education. We would say the child in a wheelchair. We don't say the wheelchair kid. We don't say the autistic kid. We don't. We say the child with autism. As they get older, they can change their empowerment terms. But this is total public school enrollment, means all the kids. At every public school, there's about 10% that are identified with special needs, even if it's a super mild one or a pretty severe one. So look at this one, specific learning disorders. That is the #1 category for special education in the United States. Special ed, biggest category, learning disabilities. Then it's speech or language, whether it's a lisp or a stutter, or not just learning English, because that's not a disability. That's a challenge, right? And just because somebody doesn't know the language doesn't mean that they're qualified for special education services. But if somebody can't communicate well, again, stuttering is one of them. Sometimes people use the wrong word. There's a lot of different speech and language issues in there, but that's also coexisting with maybe kids who have intellectual disabilities and they don't speak very well. So there's a lot of overlapping and cross categorizing. It's pretty nebulous. So again, come take 205. I'll go back once. One of the lowest ones is like, again, the kids in the wheelchair, the kids who are blind and deaf. They usually go to a different school. We have a blind children's learning center here in Santa Ana, just not too far from the campus. It's like North Tustin. And they used to not accept kids with autism, and now they do, because there's a little overlap there, kids with autism and low vision. See how low autism is? And by the way, if you look on here, there's no ADHD. There's no ADHD category. ADHD is lumped into other health problems because it's a neurological disorder. So ADHD is under OHI, other health problems or other health impairments. It will, in the next few years, carve out its own number, and it's going to be like up here in terms of prevalence. So yeah, look at this. Learning disabilities, speech or language, intellectual disabilities means IQ or Down syndrome-ish. Emotional disturbance, kids who cannot emotionally regulate big time. And then developmental delay, which means that maybe they're just behind, but they're not emotional, and they're just behind all the way. So a lot of really interesting things. And I like how it went from the blue to the spike of the yellow and back down to the, right? Overall, boom. So overall, like special education categories are going up. Yeah, it's crazy. And then we talk about early intervention. If you can intervene in preschool, you can lessen the effects of every disability. If you can intervene in preschool, you lessen the effects of every disability, including autism. So the quicker you see it, the more you help it, the better it gets, faster, right? And so just think of it like trying to teach a kid manners. Do you want to teach a kid manners at 3 or 13? 3. Do you want to do early intervention at 3 months or 3 years? 3 months, right? Not 3 years, not 13 years. So again, wait to fail approach often prevails, meaning like we wait till the kid really fails and then we'll help them. You're like, but I see all these red flags, red flags, red flags. It's hard. It's really, really hard. Kids need advocates and not a lot of parents know how to advocate. I have a hard time doing it and I speak English and I'm well educated about it. I can't imagine people who are just coming over here from like Vietnam and trying to figure out what's going on with their kid and the educational system. The IEP system is crazy. And again, every state is able to manage their special education program a little bit different. And then especially when it comes to gifted kids are not protected by the federal government. It's regulated by each state. And some states say, no, we don't have it. That's extra. We don't have the money for that. We're not going to educate our gifted kids. California, we do, right? And so another reason why people move here. It's not just high IQ. It could be a kid who's just really great at art or leadership or sports. So kids who question things, but behind the scenes, I'm going to tell you, gifted kids have a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And I like how this picture's in the book with this kid who's really good at painting. And then this says like, the caption in the under the book says, and it says, did we take things away from him? Meaning like, did he not have a normal childhood when he was given all this paintbrushes and acrylics or whatever to work with? But unbelievable, these, there's no way. I couldn't even color by number that thing in, let alone do that. But again, gifted kids have to be treated a little bit differently. You can't just give them more work. You have to give them deeper work. And by the way, gifted kids can be really, really obnoxious and hard on a teacher. So and again, guess what? Gifted kids can also have a learning disability. Gifted kids can also have ADHD. So there's a lot that shows up in this middle childhood part when it talks to the brain and the body, but whew, there's a lot there.
There's a movie called like Gifted about this girl who's like a math prodigy and her uncle tries to give her like a normal childhood. It's really good.
Good. Okay, so Gifted.
Yeah, it's such a good movie.
Okay, I'll watch that because that's important to know because there's a weird thing there. Like you want them to magnify their talent, but at the same time, you want them to have. Now, there's this thing where they're extra gifted, and we call it savant. Take 205. We'll talk about that. Kids who literally like when they grow up to adults, like they forget to shower. Like they're like more like autistic in a way, and then they are like so talented in this type of like respect, whether it's math or art or whatever, or memorizing or that kind of stuff. And it's just like, it's like talented, but like extra. Looking at this kid with a flat presentation on the face makes me think maybe he has a little bit of autism, a little bit. Maybe, again, he could just be gifted and talented, but there's a piece where if the social aspect's missing, if you say, hey, let's go join sports or, talk with your friends, and they're like, no, I'd rather paint forever. It's like, maybe there's something there too. But again, in psychology, we use the phrase, it's not a problem until it causes a problem. Right. And so again, if you have somebody providing you supports and your autism is kind of mild, then it's not really a problem. People with autism get married and have children and whatnot. It's really kind of interesting. And we're seeing a lot more of people who are quirky as kids now getting diagnosed with autism. Yeah, or gifted or having these little pocket skills, or we call them splinter skills as an adult. It's really interesting to see how, life changes and then we catch up and whatnot. So, okay, cool. So I made it a little bit late, but thanks for hanging in. And any questions, comments, concerns?